And now we move along to the third part of this video series where I show you how this pinball machine actually works. What I mean by this is, how does it keep track of your score, how does it show you your score, and how does it know what to do when it needs to do it? Remember, this machine doesn't have a computer inside of it, it's using entirely electromechanical devices. And you may have thought when we looked on the inside that the number of devices and wires in here is borderline insane. And that's true. The most confusing part is that every single device inside this machine needs to work correctly, and it needs to cooperate with every other piece inside with complete precision, or else this machine won't work at all. Sometimes problems are minor, such as a target not working or a point value not working correctly, but sometimes it can cause the machine to stop working completely. To show you how this machine works, I'm not going to bring out a circuit diagram or schematic because I feel this would just overcomplicate things. Instead, I'm going to give you a completely hands-on experience of the different parts on the inside. And I'm going to actuate them manually and even use a screwdriver to short out individual switches inside a relay so we can see what exactly each parts are doing. So to start, let's take a look in the back of the back box so we can see how the machine actually scores. So I think the best way to explain how this pinball machine works is to talk about the individual components first, and then we'll get into how they're interconnected. These are called relays. And the basic function of a relay is to control either high amperage circuits or multiple high amperage circuits with a low amperage device. Basically, if you think about how the pinball machine scores points, it needs to move the score reel and ring a bell, and sometimes it will do other functions. For instance, if it scores 10 points, it also moves the stepper unit, but we'll talk about that later. So to have all the current required to move this and ring the bell is too much to go through one switch in the playfield. So the switches in the playfield are actually energizing these different relays. So I'll use the 100-point relay as an example. If I actuate it by hand, you can see that reel is moving. Now, the way they work is they close all these different switches, and so we can see what they're each doing by shorting them with a screwdriver. This one is inactive right now. This one is what actually moves the score reel. And the one next to it, that rings the bell. So you can see I can individually activate the different parts that the relay controls by shorting their switches. But when the relay controls itself, it does both tasks at the same time. Relays get more and less complex from here. These are actually fairly complex relays. It looks more complex, but it's actually simple, because all of these are simply directly connected to one of the score reels. There's 16 of them because there's 16 score reels, so that way when these fire, they reset the score reels to the 0 position. But that's basically it for relays and their basic operations, so now we'll take a look at the stepper unit. So the first thing we actually need to look at is the score reel itself. This is player 4, and I'm going to remove this score reel here so that we can take a look at it. This is the thousands unit of the 4th player display. The reason why it's called the thousands unit is because its position is the thousands digit of the display. You have to keep in mind that we're looking from the back, so this is reversed. This is 10,000s, thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. This is actually a fake 0. All the manufacturers did this so that way your score could be larger without complicating the mechanism. Anyway, a score reel is actually a stepper unit. If I pull back on the solenoid manually, you can see it moves forward 1 position. Now it can do this quite quickly because it's spring-loaded and solenoids fire very quickly, so let me show you what that looks like. They fire quickly so that way they can do repetitive tasks and reset quickly, because when it comes to a pinball machine and when it's on location, time is money. So this score reel actually has a circuit board on it, and the purpose of this is so that way it can tell what position it's in, so that way if you achieve a certain point value it can award a replay. If you look on the inside, there's little feelers on this reel that touch the various parts of the circuit, and that's how it knows the position. There are also switches on the back and the front. Now this switch on the back is a 9-position switch, and what it does is it sets the following digit up to turn with this digit when it's at the 9 position. Because if you think about it, if you have 9,000 points and you score another 1,000, This needs to move to 0, but the next digit needs to move to 1 because you don't want to go from 9,000 to 0 points, you want to go from 9,000 to 10,000. So all of the score reels except the 10,000 unit, because it doesn't have a following reel, have a 9 position switch, so that way when it's at 9 it sets the next one up to fire with it. Basically what it does is, in this case, it wires, or it changes the wiring of the solenoid so that way it goes in parallel with this one, so they'll fire together. They all have a 9 position switch, so that even if you have 9,990 points, if you score just 10,000 points, they'll all fire and then it will go 1, 0, 0, 0. It's quite simple. And it's not really a no sort of thing, because remember, this isn't a computer. It's just a simple circuit design that allows them to fire with each other if that situation arises. These switches here are 0 position switches, and they're very important. They tell the game when this is in the 0 position. And the reason why it needs to know that is for the purpose of resetting. The way it works is the score motor will repeatedly turn, which fires the reset relays that are up here. Those in turn fire the solenoids inside of the score reels. When it's out of the 0 position, these switches are closed, which allows the solenoid to fire and also keeps the score motor turning. That way, when it reaches 0, it stops firing. But those switches are wired on their own, so the others can continue firing. The second 0 position switch, they're all wired together. Its purpose is so that way, if a single score reel is out of the 0 position, the score motor will keep turning and keep firing the reset relays in an attempt to get this back to 0. Then once they've all reached 0, the score motor stops that sequence and the game can begin. So there are 3 basic types of stepper units. There's continually advancing stepper units, there's up and down stepper units, and there's total reset stepper units. Now, the way these work is, a continually advancing is something like the one you see on the left. This is the number match unit, stepper unit. What it does is, these 2 arms here, these aren't connected to anything in back because they take their place. But these 2 arms here, one of these sets of arms is lighting the lights up that are on the back box that show what number you need to match. The other arm is actually connecting the circuit through the 10 digit on your score, so that way if it matches you win a replay. So this is a continually advancing stepper unit because each time it's advanced, it just moves in one direction. There's only one solenoid and it's a continuous ratcheting mechanism. It's very simple and very similar to the spinner unit that we looked at in the previous video. Now, one of the things that stepper units need to do is they need to change how circuits are wired. The one on the right, this is called the player unit. It determines what player is up. And it's very simple how it does this. All of these little contacts here, they represent one of the score reels inside the machine. And they're all wired so that way, depending on what position this is in, all the relays over here connect to a certain score reel. So when it's in player 4, it's up here, but when I put the ball back so that way it goes to player 1, you'll see the contacts fall back down to this position. So let me do that. So now the machine is back to player 1. This is a total reset stepper unit. The reason why it's called that is because there's one solenoid that advances it up, and there's another solenoid that resets it back to its starting position. So right now I'm pushing on the reset solenoid, and this is the advanced solenoid. As you can see, as I do this, it moves up, but I only need to push this once and it resets back to the 0 position. Now a step up, step down stepper unit is something like the bonus unit, which we'll take a look at now. This is the bonus stepper unit, and it's actually a fairly complex stepper unit. It has a number of tasks that it needs to do. One of the most important for the player is it keeps track of what your current bonus amount is. These lump of wires here, they are all wired to one of the lights. And when this paddle is on this contact, currently it's lighting up 6,000 points. Each time you are awarded a bonus, the advanced solenoid fires, which moves the contacts up. You can see it's now at 7,000 bonus. 8, 9, 10. Now, This is actually 0 bonus. What it does is it tells the machine as it's awarding your bonus, stop. And we'll get to that when we do the reset sequence after I'm done explaining this. These other contacts, what they'll do is they'll alternate which target will award an extra ball. And once this has reached its end, it will both tell it to stop and say to light special. So the way that the machine knows to give you bonus is actually quite simple. It just knows this is out of position, and it's going to do a repetitive sequence where it will fire the lowering solenoid twice for each revolution of the score motor, and when it does that, it will award you 1,000 points for each movement. Then when it gets to the very end, it knows, or it doesn't know, but the circuit is disconnected, so it stops giving you points, then it fires for the next player and moves this back up one to reset the bonus to 1,000 points. So I'll show you what it looks like when your ball is drained and it awards you your bonus. So you can see it moved all the way back down past its resting point, and then it went back up to 1,000. So that's why it's called a step up, step down, because unlike the player unit, which goes up, 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 and then resets back to 1, this has to go down repeatedly. And the reason why it does that is so that way it can actually count the bonus as it awards it to you. What it's doing in operation is actually quite simple, but the way that it has to do it is more complex, because remember, we don't have a computer here, so we have all these different contacts that when these things are touching it, basically open or close different circuits which engage or disengage certain sequences through the score motor. In my first video I said that stepper units count things. Well, this is both true and not true at the same time. This is the ball count unit, and it's not actually counting anything. All it's doing is it moves at the end of each ball, and depending on where the different contacts are resting, the machine knows what it has to do next. I have a game started and it's at ball 1. These two wires here represent the last ball. The reason why there's 2 is because this machine can be set to either 3 or 5 ball play. These wires here are what light up the different lights on the back glass to tell you what ball you're currently in. So if I move to the next ball, a sequence is created which at the end of the sequence fires the solenoid, which will move this mechanism up once. So let's observe that happen. So it's moved up and now the new ball is in play. So basically all it does is it moves one position up at the end of each ball. The machine isn't aware that it's in a new ball. All that it knows is it needs to do that sequence again. So I will set it off again and we'll change balls. Now it's in ball 3. And remember, this wire would activate double bonus if the ball was on 3 ball play, but it's not, so we'll just move forward. And now I'll move to the last ball. So in this position, it's set up so that at the end of the ball, it doubles your bonus value as it awards it to you, but also it knows at the end of this ball, stop. That's basically all it does. At the end of this ball, it's changed the wiring of the machine so that way instead of simply moving forward once, it will move forward twice. When it moves forward twice, it enters game over mode, which disables everything in the machine. So I'll activate that. So now it's at, quote, ball 6, because it's at a position where everything is turned off. Basically, what this unit does is it changes the wiring of the machine so that it has different sequences happen depending on the situation of this unit. So that's why I say it's not really counting. All it does is it moves up one position at the end of each ball, and at the last ball it changes how that sequence happens. So instead of simply counting bonus, it doubles the bonus and then moves forward twice, which represents game over mode. So I'll reset the game so you can see how it's a total reset relay that goes back to ball 1 when a new game is started. So now it's at ball 1 and a new ball is in play. Now that we've looked at some basic relays and stepper units, I'm going to try to tie that all together and illustrate how the machine actually works. Now, one thing that you need to understand about electromechanics that's pretty weird to wrap your head around is that they work by rewiring the machine while it's running. And what I mean by this is none of these switches on the score motor are actually wired to anything right now, except for this one which tells it that it's in its resting position. If I move the score motor by hand, it will start turning on its own until it gets back to this position. But this is what I'm talking about. When I turn it, nothing happens. All these switches are bouncing around, but not a single one of them has done anything. That's because, like I said, nothing is wired to anything right now. And believe it or not, we've actually got an active game. See, if I score 10 points, it actually does score 10 points. So the thing is, the relays and stepper units are what actually engage the circuits in the score motor to start working. So I'll use the reset sequence as an example. Remember how all the score reels have a 0 position switch on them? Well, they actually have two. One of them is to stop the score reel on its own, and the other is to keep this reset relay energized until all of them are at the 0 position. See, this reset relay has a switch that once closed will hold the reset relay in the active position. But that switch is grounded through all of the 0 position switches. So once all the score reels are at 0, it de-energizes the relay. Two of the switches in the relay actually activate two of the switches in the score motor. And these switches will then become wired to the reset relays and back and start them pulsing. So when this reset relay is energized, it locks itself closed, starts the score reel spinning, which then, because it has also wired these two switches to the reset relays, causes them to pulse in the back, which causes the score reels to start moving. And once they're all at 0, this relay de-energizes and this stops, and thereby you're in a new game. Now, the reset sequence has a couple other things that go along with it, but this is the most basic. And I'll illustrate it by moving this in. When I move this in by hand, it's going to keep itself in the closed position. It's going to start the score motor turning, which will reset the score reels, and then once it's done, this will release itself and the score motor will stop. So there you go. Now it's back in its resting position and the score is at 0. But we actually haven't reset anything else of the machine. It's still in ball 1 and it's still got one player. So to illustrate what a full reset sequence looks like, I will add points and start a new ball. So now we're in ball 2. This has moved up to the ball 2 position. So when you push this start button, it not only energizes the reset relay, but it also energizes the credit relay and the coin relay. These two relays are what are responsible for the reset sequences in the ball count unit, and they also take down a credit. So when I push the button, you should see all three of those relays energized, and the score motor will turn and we'll do a reset sequence again. You may have seen these two relays actually de-energized after the first rotation of the score reel because they only have one task to accomplish. But now we'll take a look at a little more of a complex sequence here, and that's the end of ball. If you remember, the ball count relay, or the ball count stepper unit, it's not really counting anything, it's just telling the machine what to do next. That's basically what you can think of it as. When it's in ball 1, 2, 3, or 4, it energizes a circuit through the score motor that once the out hole relay is energized, causes this to move forward once after the bonus unit, which is up here, does its thing. So you've got kind of like 4 devices all running at each other at the same time. So when the ball has gone in the out hole, that energizes the out hole relay, which creates a circuit through the ball count unit, which creates a circuit through the score motor, which creates a circuit through the bonus unit. Then what happens is the switches in the score motor will add points and subtract bonus as it goes through the bonus countdown. And that's a repetitive process. Remember how the bonus stepper unit looked when it was counting down? Then when it reaches 0, it changes back to the ball count unit and creates a circuit between one of the switches in here and the ball count unit, which advances it to the next ball, kicks the ball out into play, and then the out hole relay will de-energize. And that's how the ball works, or that's how ball counting works. And then when the ball count unit is at ball 5, remember, which is the last ball, it changes the circuit so that way Now it goes through the out-hole relay, which goes through here, but because this is in ball 5, there's also the double bonus relay energized. The double bonus relay changes the wiring in the score motor, which then causes the bonus unit to give twice as many points as it counts down. Then at the end, when it reaches ball 0, it tells the ball count unit advance twice. One of the switches in here changes so that it advances twice. And then when it advances twice, it's in game over mode, and the machine stops until either the start button is pressed or a new quarter is entered. So that's pretty much how electromechanics work. You've got these various devices that change how things are wired through, and then they cause different sequences to happen by having different switches active at different times. It's kind of confusing to wrap your head around because it's not like a computer program where you can look at the code and follow it. You've got all these different switches where you can follow the wires, but that's really hard. Even though they've colored the wires for you, it's really hard to follow where all they go. But anyway, I hope you can understand what I was talking about in this sequence here. It's a lot harder to think about how the machine is running than it is to think about each individual component and what they're making happen. But if you can figure it out, these machines are actually not too hard to understand. I hope this video was able to help you understand electromechanics a little bit more, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about pinball machines, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them as fast as I can, assuming that I can answer them. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was entertaining and informative, and as always, I'm Alec, also known as Edison Photo 1. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.